Hey, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. It is good to have you here. Sorry, we are dealing with a little bit of technical difficulty with one of our guests, but it's all good. I'm sure we'll figure it out. I see there have been folks already introducing themselves in the webinar. That's amazing. You guys clearly know the deal here on ProShop webinars. So if you have not already, continue to do so. Yeah, I see we have Elijah kicking us off from Indianapolis, Brian from Lincoln, Nebraska. That is awesome. Santa Ana. We got Michigan, Tempe, Arizona. All sorts of Mike from 505. Very good. East Branch Engineering in Connecticut. Awesome. Very good. Well, I'm excited for this one. This is a little bit of a unique webinar. We've not done one quite like this before. And I think that it has some interesting results, interesting conversation. So I'll introduce our guests here in a moment, but yeah, Grace is the one that helped us run this survey, and then Mr. Mike Payne, who many of you know, is going to join us, assuming his tech can get figured out. Like 5 minutes before this, his camera on his computer just completely died, and he tried to reboot. So we'll see how that all comes together. He's going to kind of be here for some voiceover as a shop that has really started digital or started paper-based, not really digitized, and then went digital and has then subsequently bought, 4 or 5 more shops that all were in that same position. So he has a great perspective on this whole topic. So let's Grace, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate it. I'm happy to do so. Grace Sciera, Research Manager over at Drive Research. We are a full-service market research firm based in the state of New York. I am based in a small town outside of Syracuse, Cazenovia. I'm not sure if anybody's heard of it. It's very rural, but very happy to be joining the webinar today to talk to you guys about the work that we did with ProShop. We worked with ProShop specifically in developing the survey instrument, the online survey that we used to uncover some of the results. And I'm here to talk more about the details of the research and from a research perspective.
Okay. And I can tell you from being a part of the meetings and watching it all unfold, there is a lot involved in doing a comprehensive and accurate research study. So really fascinating for me to kind of watch that. I think Mike is still having technical difficulties, so I will just introduce Mike for him. So he is the president and owner of Hill Manufacturing and Fabrication down in Broken Arrow, Tulsa, Oklahoma area. Like I said, he bought Hill Manufacturing from the original founder in 2018. Ironically, that was around the same time that I was on making chips for the very first time, where I told our story of growing ProCNC and selling it and starting ProShop. And he heard that episode, I think on like Monday or Tuesday of IMTS, the IMTS week in 2018. He was not planning to come to IMTS, but he heard the webinar, he heard the podcast, immediately bought a ticket for, I think, Friday of that week. Flew up for one day. I just ran into him near the main stage when he was talking to Jim Carr, and he's like, I came here to see you. So he came to our booth, did a demo, bought ProShop almost immediately after that. So he's been on ProShop since 2018. And then, like I said, Mike has bought, I think, 5, maybe even 6 more shops in the last 8 years. All of them pretty traditional, sort of, owner run, very tied into the business, paper-based, not a lot of processes, not a lot of systems, or, maybe an older ERP that's still very much like paper-based, separate QMSs. And he's, brought them onto the ProShop platform and truly, end-to-end digitalization across the shop. So he's seen that whole playbook many, many times now. And
so can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you, Mike.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I'm glad I shut up through that, because that was an awesome introduction. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Anything you want to add to that?
See me, though. My camera is not working, but microphone's at least working now.
All right. Well, I'm glad. Yeah, the audio is the most important part, so that's good. anything you might want to add to your intro?
I think you nailed it really well. I will say, I mean, just throw a little love your ERP in there. Um, we have had a great almost 9 year run of growth, but had I not gotten on that plane on that Friday and made a Friday round trip to IMTS and found Pro Shop, we wouldn't be anywhere near where we're at. So thank you guys for everything you've done to make it possible.
It's our honor for sure. Yeah, I was just texting with a customer yesterday, or actually on Sunday, who said a similar thing. He's like, I don't know where my business would be today with you guys, without you guys. And it's meaningful, and he said he's hiring 2 more people on Monday. He's a very small shop. And to me, it really hit home, like that is the full circle of our mission, right? Our mission is to help understand our clients' challenges in order to meaningfully improve their businesses and in turn their communities. And Mike, I know you have, your shops have grown so much. You have a lot of folks on your payroll now, and that all contributes to that local economy. And that is just super meaningful to us. So yeah, I'm thank you for sharing that sentiment. All right, here's what we're going to talk about today: why we ran this survey. And one of the questions that we really want to ask is, why do some shops really scale cleanly and efficiently, and others kind of stay held back, maybe constrained by tribal knowledge, or just this sort of one person deep problem that we talk about so much, where they want to grow, but they're just constrained by these forces that make it difficult to grow. So we'll talk about the research with Grace and how the study was built, why you can trust the data behind it, and then what the data shows, and kind of talk about a blueprint for what the top shops are doing. So, and then we definitely want to have time for Q&A at the end. So just some housekeeping items. Obviously, you guys have found the chat. That's great. Thanks for continuing to introduce yourselves. If you do have Q&A, please try to use the Q&A icon on the side. It just makes it easier for us to sort and filter those and not have it get lost in the chat. So, all right, I'm going to turn off the slides now, and we're just going to kind of have a conversation. So, Grace, we'll pull up. Sarah can pull up our first question here. So yeah, give us the backstory on this study. How did you decide who to survey, how you reached them, and how you got those completed responses?
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I'm happy to do so. So a couple months back, ProShop came to Drive Research with an objective. They wanted to understand how precision manufacturing shops operated, what they expect coming down the pipe in the future, and the key differences that they see between digitized operations and shops that are not so digitized. So some that might be relying on that tribal knowledge that you had mentioned earlier. Now, at Drive Research, we are a full service market research firm. And we're really used to working on projects from, having the outlined objectives and going. This was a bit of a unique perspective or situation, I should say, where ProShop had already come to us with a list of vetted questions that they wanted answers to. They also had a whole list of the specific target audience that they wanted to achieve. And oftentimes we find that, and we're happy to work with clients however they need the research being done. But I do think that this is a unique perspective with ProShop being so close to the industry that they already have that unique perspective. So it was really collaborative nature there, which we always love to kind of learn more about a different industry and understand the challenges there. And candidly, the main reason why I got into research myself, we all have a very similar mind that we'd like to uncover results and learn a lot more. So it was a lot of fun that way. What we really did here, a lot of our time was set on fine-tuning the survey instrument. And in this case, it was the online survey that we used to get the results from. From there, we executed the survey. So we put it out into the world and we got those responses. How we did that is that ProShop also shared with us a list of customers that they wanted to be included in the audience pool. So we combine that with sourced from our panel providers. And essentially what a panel provider means is that they are a provider that aggregates data and they give you contact in order to reach a target audience. We've done a number of different surveys like this. So we have a really good relationship network of different vetted and trusted panel providers. So we know who to go to for certain audiences, certain niche audiences. So we weren't terribly concerned when we saw that ProShop, the audience where we fell into who to go for. I will get into how we prevent, how we ensure we're reaching the right audience deeper down this conversation. But we did reach our audience. We put the survey out into the world. We conducted the research and shared the raw data with ProShop. And being a full service firm, we typically provide the reporting, but in this instance, ProShop did, and I will say they did an outstanding job. And again, we do see that it's pretty common when it comes to a really niche industry, and ProShop's really close to that industry, so they did a great job with the data.
Okay, very good. And then maybe you'll get into this later, but you got 144 completed responses. Looks like a little bit of a mix between the US and Canada. Can you maybe share just a little bit about how that broke out?
Yeah, sure thing. I was focused mostly on the United States with Best Efforts Canada. That was something that was outlined in the objectives, that we did note that it was going to be likely a little bit more challenging to reach, just given the nature of the industry. So it did skew more United States, and it did skew more of our panel when it comes down to breaking that between panel results versus ProShop customers. But we did utilize a number of ways to help us really max out that audience when it came to employees. But that's why, not employees, customers. But that's why we usually supplement with panel. And we do work really closely with our providers, as well as internally, to ensure that those who are in the survey are in fact those who we want to be speaking to be gathering information from, that it's data that we can trust. And just to share a little bit more information, not to uncover the results or anything, but when it came down to ensuring who we're speaking to, we do a full list of ensuring who we're reaching to as the right audience. So that comes into play for industry, job title, industry size, organization size. A lot of different questions go into it to ensure that the audience is in fact correct.
I think that even gets right into our next question we're going to cover. So yeah, tell us about this representative sample of making sure this was accurate to the industry. How you controlled that?
Yeah, great question, Paul. So again, this being a very niche group of folks, we oftentimes see that this could be an issue. Reaching that audience could be a challenge. Part of the reason why we do supplement both customer data with a sample, but we do employ not just one effort, a number of efforts to ensure that we're speaking to a real person and that they are the real person fit for the job. So what we usually start with is vetting out that target audience with our clients. So when we worked with you, we identified who the job title was, the industry, the organization size, what area they worked in, how many folks worked there. A lot of different questions went into ironing out who that target sample is. We share that with our panel providers, and we already have a good idea of who's able to provide us with that type of data. So we already have a good place to start. And when we go into that really is where we start to see kind of our budgets being put to work, because some niche audience are going to cost a little bit more than, just a general census representation of the United States. So we go in understanding that, and that kind of goes into how we start building out our project. So that's usually stage one. And we usually do reserve, and in this case we did too, we reserve a sizable portion of the survey to reflect a screener. So we put all of those questions into the survey to further double down on those parameters and those qualifications to allow somebody into the survey. That usually does a great job at eliminating folks that we don't necessarily want to hear from. I will get into this deeper into the conversation, but we also go through each and every one of the responses. And we read all of them. We make sure that they make sense. Are there any inconsistencies? Do they is there anything fishy that we'd want to exclude? And we do that for all of our surveys, especially Pro Shop. We found a couple that might necessarily want to be included, so we went ahead and removed them and replaced them. So we do a lot of different things to ensure that those are the right people that we want to hear from.
Okay, interesting. Mike, do you even when was the survey done? When over what period of months or time?
This was a couple months ago. I just had it up for me right now. We ran the survey 2 months ago.
Okay. Mike,
Yeah.
do you remember if you took this survey?
I think I did. I was actually going to ask if anybody can tell me, but I feel like I'm 99% sure I did.
Yeah. Okay. Because this was, and I think I'm just trying to wrap my head around this panel provider kind of thing. So it was a combination of some Pro Shop customers and then just a representation of other machine shops that are just kind of randomly chosen and filtered throughout the industry to make sure we get something that's a really accurate representation. Is that kind of how that works?
That's correct. Yep. And they do have access to, we shared with them the job titles that we're seeking. So they have lists and lists of individuals who fit a certain niche, a certain industry. So they're able to further hone in on those folks. It can be different for each industry in each project. But when we do find something as niche as this, we do find that we want to share as much detail as we possibly can. And Mike, I will say we do scrub out any of that personal identifying information. I could probably do some digging to see if you did take the survey, but we do a good job at scrubbing that out. So your data is safe with us.
Good.
That's good. And Keith, you mentioned not being asked to be part of the survey. Yeah, I don't think we took 100% of our customers, I don't think we were trying to find, 700 plus all the non-customers. So I don't know how the selection criteria was created, but not every single customer of ours got the survey. All right, let's go to the next question. So this is all self-reported, and a shop rates their own sort of digitalization, right, on a 1 to 5 scale. How did we just make sure that was being conveyed clearly, so the answers were coming back kind of on a scale that makes sense and honest and realistic?
Yeah, good question. So that really focuses more on the survey design itself. And there are certain ways where you can design a survey to make it flow naturally. I'm sure that all of us in this virtual room have taken surveys before, maybe after you get your tires changed or, after you go see like a local baseball game. They typically follow the same structure, and they do so for a reason. They usually kick off with a screening criteria. Sometimes it's masked, sometimes it's not, but that's usually where a provider like me is vetting out those that they want to hear from, and those are the target audience versus those that are not. We do find that exits a lot of those folks we don't want to hear from and allows them into the survey. I like to start with easier, quicker to digest questions that are top of mind for respondents. And that's also done intentionally to help avoid survey fatigue, to not ask any really challenging or mentally taxing questions up front where you run into the risk of drop off. If you put yourself in somebody's shoes taking a survey, if you're immediately asked with a question to rank 20 different options into top 3, that'd be kind of a challenge. So what we do is we structure them to flow naturally. First, screen out those folks we don't want to hear from, start smaller, start easier, get into more in-depth questions where we know that the respondent is already in that right frame of mind and they're able to share maybe open-ended feedback, something that'll take a little bit longer. And then towards the end, we usually add in a check-in. Hey, you're doing great. Don't lose your attention just quite yet. And then we close in on demographic information, which is always really helpful, depending on what survey you're doing, to cut and slice and dice that data. That's more on the survey design front. But as mentioned earlier, we do go through each and every one of the responses. And we look for things like inconsistencies in the data. So, for example, if we see somebody saying that they are a really highly digitized shop, 5 out of 5, and then we ask another follow-up question, and maybe they say that they aren't using any system. to manage their operations, that would be cause for maybe let's look into them a little bit further. We look into things like that. We look into how long it took them to take the survey. Are they taking 2 minutes to take a survey that's forecasted for 10 minutes? Likely not paying attention. Same thing goes for taking too long on a survey. That could be an indicator that somebody started the survey last night, came back this morning, and I might not necessarily trust them to remember everything they said beforehand. Typically, we remove the back button so you can't change your responses. There's a lot of things that we do to set it up for success, to set it up for that one opportunity you have to collect that data. It's the best opportunity you got. So you have to really set it up to be successful. A lot of different things that go into it, but that's what we had employed here for ProShop. And we do feel really confident in the data.
Okay. So let's talk about the actual sort of digitalization scale, if you will. So a 1 would be like just 100% paper-based company, and tell us more about that.
We had asked them to rate the digitization of their organization. 1 would be on the lower end. You'd anticipate paper. We didn't provide them any examples, and that's done intentionally because there's other questions that go into the survey that could kind of understand what do you actually use. And if they say something like paper, there's your answer. And if they say that it's rated as a 5, usually you see that they're using an ERP. They're using something more digital, something a little bit more refined, a little bit more thought out.
Okay. So Mike, you've now bought many shops that were on the scale. I'd love to hear your thoughts about what the challenges that a truly paper-based non-digital shop faces, and what you've seen as you transform them to maybe higher on the scale.
Yeah, I mean, if I think about that scale, I guess the 6 shops I've bought probably ranged from a 1 to a 2, right? I wouldn't call anybody highly digitized. There was 2 of the shops that had an ERP in place that was several years old, and the data was there, but everything had to be printed out and inputted back in. I don't know that. I mean, I feel we're pretty highly digitized. I don't know if I'd put us at a 5 still, though. Honestly, maybe that's just because I feel like we still have a little ways to go and things I want to clean up. But
sure.
The difference between if we're a 4 now. The difference between a 1, 2, and a 4 is, I mean, just night and day. I mean, when I think back to the example I've often given, Paul, I know we've talked about, like when I first bought Hill, and there was a homegrown ERP system that was, consisted of an Access database and some Excel spreadsheets and Crystal reports or something, that I'd maybe put at a 2. I would have job costing data on my desk 2 weeks after we invoiced. Right. And obviously at that point, there's nothing I can do about that job. It was a winner, it was a loser, and it's already been invoiced. The day we were live with, ProShop, roughly 12 months later from the day I bought the shop, I knew hour by hour profitability of a job, right? So, I mean, to me, if you just look at the kind of the biggest KPI we can all look at the health of our business, it's your profitability, right? And so, just even at that highest level of being able to see 2 weeks later, or hour by hour, or effectively minute by minute, if I wanted to,
sure,
my profitability. There's just no comparison, right? Like I can go fix that job that was set up this morning. It took too long to set up and it's running 4 minutes per cycle long. We can fix that on the 3rd part of the run instead of the 1,000th, and it already shipped, right? Sure. So at that highest level, the profitability that being digital brings you. I mean, I know we've used $1 million ROI considerations in the past for this type of endeavor, and in every case it's nearly an immediate payback, right? I mean, you fix one of those jobs a day, a week, or whatever, and that investment just starts paying back I mean,
Yeah.
literally on day one.
Sure. Yeah. So, Grace, maybe we can talk a little bit about some of the main categories of questions. I know we're going to get into a couple of the things in a couple later questions here, but like, I know there was a general sort of series of questions about sort of fragility of how fast a shop would start having things sort of fall down or fail if key leadership was absent. I know we talked a lot about how much manual effort it took for quality compliance, and preparing for audits, and even just like maintaining daily quality data. And then we talked a fair bit about quoting, and the sort of tribal knowledge around knowing how to price things. And Mike was just talking about job costing, which of course is part of the closing the loop on quoting. And then we also talked about just general like setup information, what it takes to make sure that people in the shop know what they're supposed to be doing, know how to set up their jobs, know how to keep things flowing. So maybe, yeah, can you speak to a little bit of just sort of these general sort of areas that we were kind of curious about?
Yeah, sure. Paul, you already did beat me to the punch on a couple of those, on how they were categorized, some of those challenges that they'd see. But we did open them with kind of looking back, like tell us a little bit about your organization, like, how digitized are you? And really kind of setting that groundwork for the information that your team did end up using for reporting, and understanding kind of how much has the industry changed, or how taxing do you find your job to be, and what are those factors that might have contributed if they did find it to be a little bit more taxing. So we did a lot of questions around kind of that, I'd say, groundwork to understand kind of where they're at. And then from there, I moved into the state of digitization. And that's where we were able to identify kind of how digitized are you? What type of systems are you using? If they are using an ERP, what type of ERP are they actually using? And getting a lot more of that granular data. And it's also, what are they using it for? What are the specific jobs that they're using it for? And that's where we understand things around audit and compliance. And we were able to extract, which in the report, I noticed that your team did a good job at really painting a picture to what are those tasks that teams are using for an ERP, and kind of what are the challenges or what are the gaps that really need to be filled? What could be a challenge if you're put in their shoes? We also had a lot of questions. I think you covered this too. Those unexpected challenges. If a leader is gone, how or an unexpected error occurs, how long until it would take for your team to run smoothly? Things like that, or tied to what Mike had shared earlier, profitability was a question that we had asked a lot about. How long does it take to determine profitability of a job, or how much of a job has lost? Things like that.
Okay, so Mike, you've having bought as many shops as you did, you've clearly run across sort of this, key person knowledge or owner, tribal knowledge in their head, and this idea of how fragile the company might be if key people, were not available all of a sudden, or their ability to take a vacation and and enjoy it, knowing that things are okay back at the shop. Any sort of anecdotes or themes that you might want to kind of share with all your experience there?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, every shop has that person, right? Even if I look at us today, where I can't, I was with you all the week last week, right?
Yeah.
And the shop ran fine, but it does still. Then there's still a few folks back here that have to be here, right?
Mhm.
But the more we give them the systems to follow our processes, right? I mean, for me, it's all people, systems, and processes, and they can take that time too, right? So what I would say, like, my key man was able to do that. He took a 2-week vacation a month ago, and we didn't fall apart, right? I mean, there's balls to pick up when anybody's gone,
Sure.
but through the acquisitions, I mean, every time we buy one, absolutely, there's that one. It could be the owner, it could be a shop manager, whatever. But there's that one or two people maybe that are absolutely critical. And even on that scale of saying most of the shops I've bought are 1 and 2, the 2s were a lot easier to buy than the 1s, right? And
Right.
because there was some sort of system in place, there was some sort of recording of how we run this job, how we do this thing. You got to kick the machine in the lower left hand corner to get it to warm up in the morning, right? Like if that was documented, it was easier to know. And the less reliance you can have on that, the more valuable your company is, right? So through my acquisitions,
Mm-hmm.
if it's relying on that owner and that owner's leaving in this transaction and not going to really be available, it's worth less than, I mean, I get the keys tomorrow and it just runs like it's always run. That's worth more, right? So, um, not only do you perform better, but you create incremental value in your business
Mhm.
by having these systems and processes in place that survive any 1 to 5 people.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that. And we did a podcast on that. I think it was Machine Shop Mastery episode 80, maybe, or 88. If people want to look it up. Yeah. How to 4X your money buying machine shops.
Mhm.
And yeah, putting in a system to become more digital can just instantly not only double your multiple of what the company might be worth, but it also helps just boost profitability, which is also the other lever. If you're a multiple of EBITDA, you have increases in both of those, you have a lot more valuable business. And one of the main things I would say about this is there's lots of people out there that do not want to sell their business. But I
Sure.
can tell you that even if you don't, and it's gonna, you're gonna have it until you pass away or hand it to your kids one day. It's a much nicer business when it does, when it's run as if you were gonna sell it. Um, it's more profitable. It's a better quality of life.
Well,
There's no downsides, right?
yeah, and I think even there, I mean, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of people have no intention of selling, maybe ever, right? But to your point, I mean, not only is it a better quality of life and all those types of things that you can take vacation and run your business, or the business is running. Um, you also got to look at factors too. I mean, you're more scalable because you're more bankable, right? I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into a well-run company beyond just, I have a better quality of life because I can go to Colorado for 2 weeks every year, right? Like my bank has more confidence in me. I'm gonna get better financing terms. I'm gonna get a better line of credit. I can scale with growth opportunities that happen. Paul, we've talked. I mean, I know hundreds of examples of this, but I had my biggest new client in the office all day yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and in a lot of ways, we never had to leave the conference room,
Right.
right? Because
Yeah.
as they wanted to understand how we do quality, as they want to understand how we do our entire value chain,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm able to it's on the screen. We're able to just walk through it. They left with the confidence that we can surge with their demand, and still provide the quality and all that they require.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. No, that's I've heard that time and time again. And yeah, it's building that confidence, that trust level that a shop is, has the systems in place to, I don't want to say guarantee, performance, but
Sure.
highly much more likely to be a solid vendor, follow through on their commitments, deliver quality parts on time. Because any customer ultimately is in the risk mitigation business. I'm sure people have heard me say that before. They want to know when they onboard a new vendor that vendor is trustworthy and they're not going to, drop the ball on an order and cause havoc in that customer's supply chain or assembly line or whatever, they're doing with those parts. So that's a huge.
Well, and for like a real practical antidote. So this customer yesterday, this last week they went and saw another new vendor of theirs, much more local to them,
Mm-hmm.
and you know what they explained to me is after walking through their shop they left that meeting feeling confident in the work that they're currently doing for them, but realizing they're not scalable, right? It's the owner, who's also a father that has 2 children in the business, is the bottleneck. There's 2 children that are learning and doing things. But if especially if the owner is absent, I mean, there's no growth, there's no sustainability.
Right.
They were able to walk through my facility and see, okay, I mean, we start talking more like, what's my total capacity, more so than like, can we do the work, right? Because they see to your point, there's the confidence there that we have the systems, the processes, and the people to deliver what they need on a sustainable basis as they're looking at this 5, 6, 7-year project.
Yep. So, in fact, I was just reminded as I'm looking at some of the chat here, we have some of our friends from East Branch Engineering and Manufacturing shop in Connecticut that was, I don't know, client number, I think sub number 10 back in 2017. And Modern Machine Shop magazine did an article about them, about this exact topic, how they had a big customer that I think maybe got acquired. That new ownership, management team wanted to come in and just sort of clean out their vendor base. They had too many vendors, just far too much to manage. And they were dual sourced on a part, and we're gonna, Sarah perfect, Sarah, thank you. So click on that link in the chat. You can read that article yourself, but basically, East Branch had just recently switched off of E2 onto ProShop. And this client went and visited both shops that were dual sourced on this really big hog out part. And the other shop was actually, ironically, I believe still was on E2, very paper-based, very manual. And then they went and visited East Branch and sat in the conference room, showed them exactly how they made their parts, watched in real time as inspection data started populating, into the records, and then walked out and watched the parts actually being made. And they were so impressed by that you can guess which shop got the axe, and East Branch got, all the orders instead of being dual sourced. And it subsequently grew from there. So very cool that they're here, and you guys can read about, a really clear example of this exact same thing, where the digitalization can have meaningful impacts in the trust that a customer will give you and the orders they will subsequently give you. So that was an unexpected little treat there. Okay, let's move on to the next question here. Yes, so this was a very interesting result. So tell us about this 0% of least digital shops rated compliance as effective, and 100% of the most digital did.
Sure thing. And I think what we were trying to uncover here, this question, the purpose of the webinar, is that how valid is that? How would you read that? And my general advice when it comes to research findings that are, I would say, extreme or on the extreme end, you want to consider all of the results for the survey as well. This one's a unique case in that the lower digitized shops, we find that they had a lower base size. They were around 24 individuals. When you consider a full base size of around 140, that's a portion, but it is lower. So when we do have a smaller sample like that, we do flag, hey, proceed with caution, look at these results directionally. That said, it does make sense that a shop with lower digitization would run into issues. It's something that we are seeing across the board with some of the results, that it would make sense anecdotally. So when I read that and I do consider the base size and say, hey, read this directionally, it's something that in my gut, well, that does also make sense. So it's something that it's a case-by-case basis, but certainly something to consider whenever you're reading any research result, whether it be extreme or not extreme, large base size, smaller base size, just in the general art of research, just be skeptical in general.
Okay. So, and this is just to be clear, was this quality compliance? Was this security compliance, or just general compliance?
General compliance and audit. We intentionally made it a little more general, so it was applicable to a number of different industries that we were already targeting.
Got it. Okay. So, so Mike, maybe it's an interesting point you made. I think when you were flying out to come, we went to that IMTS party, and you were like, "Yeah, our stage 2, our second day of our AS9100 audit starts today or starts tomorrow, and I'm not here for it, and I'm not really worried about it."
Yeah, no, it is kind of a surreal feeling to know that, like, yeah, day 2 of our stage 2 was happening the day I was getting on a 8 a.m. flight or whatever, and not stressed. I mean, certainly it's in the back of your head, like, is that smart? but no, I mean, again, confidence in people, processes, and systems, right? Like, allows you to do that. And it really was very stress free. And by the time I had gotten checked into the hotel for evening, had good word back that we passed with flying colors and everything was great. And but you got to have those, it wouldn't happen without the system. And I did my first ISO audit without a system and swore we'd never do that again.
Right.
And by the following audit, we had ProShop live, and the difference in the audit process was just night and day. Right. I mean, it was a productive process going through the audit. When we had the systems and the data to support everything. Before that, it was just like banging your head against the wall.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And, one of the things that we surveyed on is even just like this idea of what is the state of compliance? Like, what is the state of flow downs, of requirements, of what you need to prove? So Grace, I don't know if you're ready to speak to any of that, but that was, and if people want to start downloading that report, it's now available there. Sarah just shared it. So feel free to pull that up and start, browsing through that. But yeah, just trying to understand just the general compliance, just landscape right now, and I believe the results were, it's just getting harder and harder. There's more and more requirements. There's more and more flow downs. There's more and more, things that customers are making you prove, or auditors are making you prove. And we all know, NIST 800-171 and CMMC is looming large for all of us. So Grace, anything you can speak to about just general requirements of all the compliance needs?
Yeah. Well, I will say too, when we were saying compliance and audit, that was just one portion of what we had surveyed. They were really asked more as a matrix to understand what does your organization primarily use to manage the operational tasks, and then we dove in from there. So we asked everything from audit compliance to job tracking to scheduling to administration work. So there were a lot of different operational tasks that you'd envision. Maybe a smaller shop would have more folks doing doing a lot of different things, versus a larger shop maybe having individuals, dedicated to a certain task. So that's why when we do put together like a survey this niche, we do incorporate not only as a screener to ensure, hey, are you the correct organization size that we want to speak to? But then we're also able to break that down and look at that data based off of the organization size. So on the surface level, if you take a look at maybe just like in what we had shared with your team, the live online report that we shared with you, it's overall. But when you do have the raw data there, that's where like you really unlock just a lot of potential. You're able to dive in so deep and understand, all right, well, what are my clients, my customers that are this size? What are they seeing as a challenge? What are they seeing as a major roadblock? What are they seeing as something that could be, an opportunity on the horizon? I don't believe that's something that we did ask, but that's something that in future iterations, something you can lean into, and you can understand for different sizes, different industries. But that did strike a chord with me. We were talking more about compliance. That was just scratching the surface there. There's a lot of different questions that we incorporated there into that one series matrix.
Okay, very good. Let's, I know that we have some Q&A piling up here. Feel free to start getting those in if you have more. And let's move to that next question. Yeah, from a research standpoint, what should we keep consistent next year so the year-over-year comparison stays valid? And, we know that for many of the folks on this call, we know that one of the most the surveys that are kind of most well known are the Top Shop survey from Modern Machine Shop magazine. If you're part of other organizations like NTMA or PMPA, they have their own surveys as well. But I know survey design is really important and having something meaningful, and we intend to keep doing this for years to come. There's got to be some consistency. You can't just change it up all the time, right? So yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, you hit the nail right in the head, Paul. When you're developing a survey, you really want to be mindful of the design, especially for a trended study, like a state up, something where you'll be sharing this on your website, on webinars, something that's going to have high visibility and high usability, likely, especially considering some of the data that you uncovered. A lot of that's really usable. You want it to be something that you can look back on year after year and make that trendable. So this past iteration that we did, that can be considered a great baseline benchmark data to then start restudying and to easily identify movements in the industry, movements in certain niche categories, industries, maybe even just sizes, job titles. What are they saying year over year? It's a great way to set a survey up for success that you can reference year after year. That said, we do always recommend, yes, keeping things largely consistent when you're putting together a second iteration, but to be mindful of some of the ebbs and flows in the industry. Some things that, maybe Pro Shop wants to understand something different. I think I took a peek at some of the Q&A where we wanted to understand more of areas of improvement, depending on what ERP they use. That's something that we would want to look into incorporating. And something that you and Mike were just talking about earlier on quality of life questions. This is something where these shops are so personal that asking a question like that could really uncover some tremendous value for somebody considering taking on a different investment. That it could improve their quality of life, it could improve their bottom line, it could improve, sharing their organization with their children. There's always some flexibility there. Overall, keep things consistent so you have that benchmark data, but always allow some room for flexibility, some ebb and flow in the industry.
Okay. So, yeah, maybe we'll kind of start pulling some of those questions in. So, about ERP systems, I know that like on page 33 of the survey results, or our report about it, it asks about dedicated ERPs versus custom or paper-based or manual. Do you know how many different ERPs or was the question even asked which ones they're using, or was it just if you have a dedicated one?
It was asked, and it does incorporate the results that I'm looking at with the raw data here. It does incorporate other mentions as well. So it's at least 10, up to 13 separate that we had also surveyed. So a good amount to dig into.
Yeah, that's great. And then one of the most interesting things that I have this running joke with Adam Zimmer at Zimmer Manufacturing about whether a machine shop is easy to run or the hardest business in the world. And he jokes that, it's easy peasy. But that is one of the questions. Has running your shop gotten easier or harder in the past 5 years? And it says the highly digitalized shop, 88% of them says it's gotten easier to run, while 0% of the least digitized report the same thing. Is that similar to the compliance question? When you have something that extreme, yeah, is that how should we read that?
I would say that, to my point previously, that it's an extreme data point, but you want to take a step back and consider the other answers to the survey that you're seeing. It makes sense, that if we're seeing compliance struggle for something, so for an organization that's less digital, you'd anticipate maybe things would be a little harder. Maybe they would find a little bit more challenges versus an organization that's a little bit more up to speed or advanced when it comes to digitization. It could be different for industry, but I think my gut reaction after taking a look at the data, that would make sense. But it's such a good point, Paul, to evaluate and look at other areas where you're saying this feels extreme. Trust your gut, dig into it a little bit further, and consider the rest of the results.
I would just combat with Adam and say that it's not easy to run, but it's a whole lot easier with a good system.
Sure. And I think that's, he says it tongue in cheek, but
I know.
But yeah, it is when you look at the actual graph of this thing, it's really interesting, and it does seem right to me. Like if you had been running a paper-based shop, that was probably reasonably okay, 20 years ago. And as just the business gets more complex, more competitive, more requirements, more demands, like the bar to like what is acceptable and what works okay, what's manageable, just gets higher and higher and higher. So if you're not adapting to that, putting in better tools, it's 71% of shops on the scale of 1 said it's significantly harder to run their business. So let's get in a couple questions here. Elijah asks, considering the relatively fast ROI that Mike described and all the benefits of digitalization, in your experience, what is the biggest obstacle to shops actually digitizing their business?
So I've onboarded every shop I've bought now, right, into this process, and I guess it's kind of the who moved my cheese theory a little bit, right? Like, I think this industry gets very, very comfortable in doing things the way you've always done them, and you don't fix what's not broke, and I think you have to have a little bit of the approach, kind of a continuous improvement approach of you do fix what isn't broke, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's been working, it's fine, but it's not the best. And the biggest thing, like from a practical application standpoint, and I saw somebody else asked a question about like, I can't get my people to understand the importance of it. I think this answers that too. It's, in the case of my first install at Hill, like I had to be the champion, right? It was me. And there was really, at that point, there was no arguing about, oh, well, so-and-so wants us to do this, but it's dumb, right?
Mm-hmm.
They could still feel that way, but just the fact of the matter is we were making the change, right?
Sure.
And, so, the biggest hurdle is just that fear of change that all change brings.
Mm-hmm.
But, what I saw, and I know I've relayed this to you before, Paul, like at Hill, for example, my adoption on the shop floor was a lot faster than my adoption in the office. And it was because they saw the most immediate direct impact, positive impact on their day-to-day life, right? Everything they needed was right in front of them. It was less of a change and more of a help. In the office, there was a little bit more of a change in like how you queue up purchasing and how you do quoting. That was probably a little bit more of the pushback for us. Our shop floor integration, I would say, in almost every instance, has been very, very fluid. In some of the integrations, we've fought, like we haven't fought the process of doing it. Well, of the act of doing it, we have fought I forgot to do that. Right. So it's been more like, I was sharing with you last week, like some, just getting the muscle memory of filling out the IPCs with one of the newer acquisitions we did, filling those out every 8th part or, whatever the requirement is on that job.
Sure.
Things like that. And I think that's just, for me, it's been, ongoing review of results and then just reminding people all the time, every day. It's like, hey, you missed this yesterday. Make sure you don't miss it today. And then when they miss it today, you remind them again. And generally they self-correct. I mean, we've certainly had some people that, yeah, we have lost people because we went digital on stuff, right? But they ended up with the message from the champion and from leadership that this is how we do things now. There's no more, we didn't used to do it that way. We do now. And you just have to enforce it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'll add to that, Elijah, that obviously going digital requires a couple of main things. One is you got to put in some of the infrastructure, right? Having a computer or a device out at each main workstation where people are working, that is absolutely essential. If you're trying to go digital, but you're trying to have everyone share 3 different kiosks that are kind of scattered throughout the shop, that is just a recipe for failure. So that's critical. And then just supporting your team through that change management is just immensely important. Hearing their concerns, letting them voice, what they're afraid of, or they're afraid their job's at risk or whatever. You want to make sure they feel comfortable sharing that. But then once you're past that, and then you also got to really paint the picture of why we're doing this, why this is important to the organization, how, their participation in it is critical, and really get that buy-in. The best leaders do this part, make sure it's really, really solid. But then once you've done that, kind of like Mike was saying, we are doing this. You're either with us or you're not. And I know I've had a few customers that, had people that really push back, like, I am not time tracking. And they did not last. They in some cases made an example of them, even if it's a
Right.
a skilled machinist. They're like, you're one of our best guys, but you are pushing against this, and I'm sorry, you no longer have a place in this organization. So sometimes
I would tack onto that just a little bit too. Sometimes these type of systems, and we do machine monitoring. I mean, we've got a lot of stuff going on that tracks labor and performance and all sorts of things. And that initial install, like the time tracking, I know some of the pushback I've heard on that. Like the early pushback is, oh, they're big brothering me, right? Like, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
And I think it's real important as you roll those out, like Paul mentioned, the why. So you need to understand why, but don't just call out the bad performances, right? Like, in that shop meeting, in your daily stand up, whatever, like, point out those people that did adopt it from day one. Like, hey, great job. You had 97% time track against work order yesterday.
Yeah.
Well, I was working 97% of the day. Oh no, you only worked 12.
Sure.
Right. I mean, like, no, it was all day. Well, you didn't record it. So I don't have proof of that. Right. So I do think if you take the big brother approach, you'll get more pushback.
It's a great way to wrap it up. It's a great pearl of wisdom there. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Grace. So we are at the top of the hour. We got to wrap this one up. But yeah, thank you so much for joining. Definitely dig through the survey results. Feel free to ask our team questions about it. Just reply to that email or whatever. So thank you again for joining this one. And yeah, we'll see you all on the next webinar. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.